Ever wondered what it would be like to be Jesus whenever he was traveling along preaching? Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have almost zero privacy wherever you went? Have you ever wondered what it would be like to look out on the crowds and see all the different people that were there and all the different reasons they were there? Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be in his shoes just for a moment? Or, on the other hand, have you ever wondered what it might be like to have been in that crowd where Jesus was? What if you were one who was in that crowd and yet you didn't believe that you belonged there? That's what I want to talk about a little bit this morning. If you would, turn with me to Mark chapter 7, and I'm going to read just verses 24 through 30. And I probably won't read them all consecutively, so just keep your finger there whenever I pause. Starting with verse 24. And from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre. And when he had entered a house, he wanted no one to know of it, yet he could not escape notice. Wouldn't that be just a wonderful feeling to just get away from a while? How many times have you on a Sunday afternoon especially just want to kick back and relax and just get almost into that lull of getting to sleep, and the neighbor cranks up the lawnmower and mows the yard, and they finally shut the blasted thing off only to have the phone ring, and you think, well, I might as well go do something because I can't rest. You know, imagine what it would have been like for Christ to finally go to Tyre, which was on the outstretched border of all the land of Israel. Even from the very beginning, it was on the outstretched border. And it was just about as far away as you could get from all of what Israel was and still be there. Went to the border, went into a house, and just wanted to take a break. But he could not escape their notice. Keep going. But after hearing of him, a woman whose daughter had an unclean spirit immediately came and fell at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of the Syrophoenician race, and she kept asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He goes to the outstretched border. And on the outstretched border, there were Jews, but there were also Gentiles. The difference between a Jew and a Gentile: a Jew was someone who could trace their family lineage back to Abraham. And through the 12 tribes, through all of that, you were related somehow, some way, through one of those tribes back to Abraham. He was a father of Israel. He was a father of the Israel nation. So in order to be a Jew, you had to be able to pretty much trace your family back. There were exceptions, but not very many. And a Gentile was just basically anybody else. The Jews were God's chosen people. The Gentiles were not. And so I mentioned being in the crowd and feeling like you probably shouldn't even be there. Or why am I wasting my time? And Jesus comes into a house just wanting to be alone. And immediately a lady comes in who is not a Jew. And it says she falls at his feet and keeps asking over and over and over again for him to cast the unclean spirit out of her daughter. Now, I can fully and completely understand why a mother or a father would do such a thing. You know, we'll go to great lengths to do anything we can for our kids. And that's what this woman was doing. But I also realized that in this situation, it was not like she was a Jew, and it was not like that Jesus could just say, to her just like he did everybody else, go your way, everything's taken care of. What do you expect that she was thinking that Jesus would do? She's at his feet. Would you please cast the unclean spirit out of my daughter? She's not here. She's back at my home. What would you expect her to think that that Jesus' response would be? And he was saying to her, let the children be satisfied first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. I've read this passage of Scripture a lot of times, and it took me a long time to figure out kind of what he was going with. And this week, it's finally, basically, the light bulb comes on, There was a problem here. Jesus was the Messiah, but the Messiah of who? According to all prophecy and everything, Jesus was the Jews' Messiah, the one who is coming, who is going to set the Jewish people free, according to all prophecies. Everything that Jesus did from the time of his birth, the way of his birth, all of his travels, as he traveled through in hiding whenever he was just a child, everything that Jesus did fulfilled all the prophecies. And Jesus was very careful and very smart in that everything he did fulfilled all the prophecies. Now, the problem here is that whenever you have a crowd, there are so many different people in that crowd. Imagine just a crowd that would have been gathered in this situation. There would be those who came just for the show. We heard this guy, Jesus, that he's caused people who were lame to get up and walk. And, there's nothing else going on in town. We got to go see this. We've heard that he's caused the blind person to see. We got to go see this. For some, it was almost like an entertainment. It was like an amusement. It was like an attraction for somebody to see. There were those who were coming and bringing their friends because their friends were lame or blind or had troubles. And maybe, just maybe, they might get called out of the audience. And we'll see how this thing works. And I'm sure that there were people in the crowds at every gathering who were studying to see how he was doing that. I mean, look at the attraction that Jesus had. And if I could just figure out how he's causing that lame person to get up and walk, or if I could figure out how he's causing that blind person to see, if I could do that, everybody would be following me. Greed and power has always been present. And my goodness, it sure is today. And so there was those in the crowd. There were those who really recognized Jesus as the possible Messiah. This was later on in his ministry, so he'd been doing this for quite some time. And those who kind of had a bit of knowledge about it were watching to see if this could possibly be the true Messiah. And those were the ones who were very important in this situation. Because Jesus came for the Jews. Now, what they may not have understood, because, prophecy is a lot easier to understand after it's been fulfilled and you're looking back on it, you say, oh, this is what this meant, and this is what this means. What the prophecy was that he came for the Jews first, and after the Jews rejected him, then he opened it up to everyone. But we were at a time in this story that hadn't happened yet. The Jews had not denied him yet and turned him away. That happened at the crucifixion. So Jesus was at a tricky spot whenever he comes and this woman who is a Gentile, who is not a Jew, and asks for her daughter to be healed. And you know, as well as I do, that Jesus wanted to fill that need. But here's the problem. If Jesus starts ministering to the Gentiles, it's going to kick him out of being the Messiah of the Jews. The Jewish leaders are going to say, well, this can't be him because that's not in the prophecy that he is ministering to the Gentiles. Because the Jews did not like the Gentiles at all. Now look again at what Jesus said. It's not good to take the children's bread, the children being the Jews, and throw it to the dogs. Who are the dogs? The Gentiles. Now imagine if you were a devout Jew and you were standing there or just close enough and you heard Jesus say, it's not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And that devout Jew might say, boy, he nailed that one. You know, he really called that Gentile just what they are, just a bunch of dogs. He really nailed them. Now, you know, when I first started looking at this, how many times have we prayed for something and it doesn't come just right away? And so in our minds, we start thinking, okay, God's working on it. And that lasts for a little while, you know, maybe 20 minutes. And then we think, well, maybe he's not working on it. And maybe it's something we got to wait for. I'm not very good at waiting. So the answer must be no. All right. Here you are kneeling at the foot of Jesus saying, if you could just heal my daughter, and he calls you a dog. He says, you know, it's just not going to happen. That's what everybody else heard. But I want you to look at the uniqueness of what Jesus did. And this is something that escaped my attention, has escaped it for years. He says it's not good to take the children's bread, being the blessings of God, and take it away from the children to feed it to the dogs. Now, I don't know how many of you have pets in the house. We were down at Jenny's over the last weekend, and they've got a little Pomeranian who is basically deaf, can't hear anything. You can walk right up on it, and you can get almost right up to it, and then all of a sudden it jumps and starts barking at you because, you know, it was just laying there sleeping. But that thing has your full attention every time you start eating something. It's just sitting there, just waiting. Come on, how about a crumb? You know, how about a bite? Just anything. Justin and Monica have a big dog, and that thing, it's real friendly, especially at mealtime. I mean, it's just right there. Just come on, drop something, please, anything, I'll take it. And Jesus uses this on this woman, who is a Gentile. He said, I'm not going to take the bread away from the children to feed the dogs. But what he was doing was he was opening up an avenue. He was opening up a door for this woman. And I never saw it before. Let me read on. Look at her response. But she answered and said to him, yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table feed on the children's crumbs. He's just called her a dog. And you know what? She didn't care. She knew that she didn't deserve anything that he had to give her, but she was praying for his mercy. He classified her as a dog while the Jews were the children. I've been in that classification all my life. I understand what you're doing. But she says she realized she's been asking him over and over and over again, and finally she heard what he said. And then she says, but even the crumbs that fall from the table, the dogs get to eat. Do you see what he's doing? He's saying, you know, if I just come right out and I say, okay, you know, I know you're not who I'm supposed to be ministering to, but here is just a kind of an open door for you to run into. And everybody sitting around was going, yeah, he called her a dog. That's what she is. She's a dog because she's a Gentile. And so they don't pick it up. And she says, yes, but even the crumbs that fall from the children's table. I'm not asking for everything. I'm not asking you to make my life complete. I'm not asking you to do all this and do all this. And I'm not asking you to just pour everything out on me. I'm just asking for one thing. And that is the crumbs that fall from the table, to heal my little girl that she might not have that unclean spirit. And Jesus' response, because of this answer, go your way. The demon has gone out of your daughter, and going back to your home, she found the child lying on the bed, the demon having departed. Now then, this is where I'm trying to go with this. When you pray, what do you expect to happen? I mean, be honest, what do you really expect to happen? And the reason I bring this up is because of the society that we live in today. We've all been raised to where we want to give our children more than what we had, right? I mean, everybody does, and I'd say we do. The only problem with it is in our society today, we are giving so much away that not all of it is appreciated. It's just, I'm guilty of that. Think of how many things that are great treasures to you that was just given to you. You didn't have to do anything for it, it was given to you. You don't have any real investment in it, it was just given. And then now think about all the things that are kind of, special to you because you've got a vested interest in them. Maybe you had to work summer jobs in order to save up the money to get it. Maybe it was time you spent with your grandma or your grandpa or your mom or dad, and it was just an heirloom that was passed down, not because it just belonged to them, but because you had invested so much time and you enjoyed being with them. One of the most valuable pieces of furniture in our house is the desk, for me, that sits in our living room, and it was my grandparents, because every time we go to Grandma and Grandpa's, we played in the bottom drawer of that thing with every little soldier and little cowboy and Indian and every toy that come out of a box of cereal, and all these toys lay on that cold linoleum floor, and we'd play for hours. But it was not only what was in that drawer, but it was in the next drawer where Grandma and Grandpa had their game. Grandma could get in there and get a game when you could play it, but you couldn't. And then the next drawer was where Grandpa kept all of his checks and his records for the farm and everything, and we didn't even dare ask what was in the top because we knew it was off limits. But whenever that thing came up to where I could get a chance to get my hands on it, it's of great value. Sherry's got a chest also in her living room that she has a picture of her dad on, buck naked, whenever he was 6 months old. Every one of our grandchildren on that side has got the same picture laying on that same chest with that same rug. It is of great value to her because it was an investment. But whenever we get something for nothing, big deal. Big deal. Nobody thinks anything about it. Nobody even considers it. I don't know how many intersections we went to where there was people standing out at the intersection with a cardboard sign wanting free giveaways. And at every one of them, there was at least one or two businesses that had help wanted signs in their windows or on their banner up above. And I don't want to be rude and say, if you need some help, there's a job right over there. There's a job right over there. There's a job right over there. We're so used to getting it for nothing that's why all the businesses in our country are practically looking for help and can't find it, because we have too many people who are expecting to get it for nothing. It's kind of a scary time. It should be. This gave the woman whom Jesus, to all everybody else, considered an insult to, it gave her an opportunity to come back to Jesus. He says, I'm not going to take the food off the table to feed to the dogs. She already recognized where she belonged in this relationship. And she says, no, but the crumbs that fall, that's all I'm asking for. And he said, good answer. I set you up for that one. I just didn't know if you was going to catch it or not. You kept asking the question, you kept asking the question, you kept asking the question, and I kept telling you the same answer over and over until all of a sudden the light bulb comes off And you go, aha. She finally pictured it. Whenever we ask for something from God in prayer, do we ever take time to listen to what he might be saying? You know, I've always felt like that, and I've learned this the hard way, that the best thing to do after you pray is to be quiet and listen. Just listen. Not for the slamming sounds, not for the great big kaboom, but for that quiet voice. Elijah, after he had done one of the most miraculous forms of who he was and who God was and everything, and he just thought his life was over with because Jezebel was after him, Ahab was after him, and he runs for 40 days and 40 nights and hides in a cave, and God says, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Well, I'm the only one left. I'm the only one left. You might as well just kill me now because I'm the only one left." And God says, "Come out to the mouth of the cave, and I'll speak to you there." And he comes out to the mouth of the cave. A great earthquake shakes all the rocks and everything, and you know how an earthquake is. But God wasn't in it. And after the earthquake, a fire. And you know what a fire does, how it consumes everything, and it's just so hot and blasting and everything, and just so fierce. But God wasn't in that. And after all that, there was a gentle breeze. Just a gentle blowing. And then God spoke to him again. He says, "Now, Elijah, what are you doing here?" And he goes on to tell him that no, he is not alone, and that he still has plans for him. But if we're just looking for the earthquake, if we're just looking for the fire, if we're looking for the 2x4 up the side of our head for God's response, we want it now, we want it direct, we want it to be without any doubt, we're not listening. And that's one thing that I believe that this Gentile woman is trying to teach us, and that's why it's in here. Now, keep in mind that the book of Mark, just like the other Gospels, was written several years after Jesus' ministry. This was not a daily journal that he kept. This is what he was writing down afterwards because he realized that what was happening to all of the disciples and their fates, and he thought somebody's got to write this down so that other people in years to come will be able to read these words and be pointed to Christ. And I'm sure that probably Matthew was one of those because of the reaction a lot of times of the disciples to Jesus. Whenever he heard that he called that woman a dog, he probably thought, yeah, we're the chosen ones, not her. And it was probably years before he ever figured out what he was really doing. You know, whenever we ask, sometimes God does say, "Not yet." Sometimes God will say, "Maybe not ever." And sometimes, and I believe this more than others, is if you'll open up my word, if you'll listen to my voice, if you'll listen, you'll hear the answer. I'm going to give you a clue. I want to point you in the right direction, but I want you to find it. I want you to find the answer. You know, I've heard for years and years and years that people say, "Well, I would read the Bible, but it's just so confusing and it's just so complicated, and I don't know where to start, and I don't know where to look and everything." And I get that. And then this great thing came up that all of you use on a regular basis, and it's called Google. You ever just Googled a scripture to try and figure out where it was? Or what does the Bible say about forgiveness? What does the Bible say about giving? What does the Bible say about, and you just pick your title. And it'll bring up all these scriptures and all these websites by the Bible Institutes and by, Read Your Bible and all this stuff to help you out. And I honestly believe that a lot of times whenever God is answering a prayer, he is pointing us in the direction, because it's not just a one-way street. The answer's not just one way. In some of the prayers that I've dealt with over the years, maybe forgiveness, trying to forgive somebody for something that's happened to me, and I felt like they were responsible, it was not just, you deal with them because I'm all right. The word kept coming back to me, you need to learn to love people better. You need to be able to understand where they're coming from. You need to understand their side of it so that I can work it, both of you, together to get the right answer. God has a way, I believe, and Jesus demonstrates it here to me, at least, of pointing us in the direction that we need to go, hoping that we will take the step to get there. Just pointing us there. He pointed it out to this woman who says, I can't really do exactly what you want, but I want to help you. So he uses this illustration that she understood very well. And he says, I'm not going to feed the bread to the dogs. I'm going to give it to the children first. Fulfilling prophecy. And after she finally pictured that in her mind and studied it, she says, yes, but even the crumbs that fall, the dogs eat. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for. Now, how else could he have answered that and saved face with the Jews? How else could he have answered that and still been true to the prophetic message of who he was? The crucifixion hadn't happened yet, so he had to be careful how he did it. But he wanted her to receive the blessing. Anytime you or I ask for something from God, anytime that we have something that, especially in the will of God, and we're praying for it, he wants to answer that in a positive way. But I believe he also wants to point us in the direction that if we find it, that we'll be strengthened by it. Not just say, okay, here it is. Here it is. But have an investment in it so that you'll appreciate what I've done. By all rights, this woman had no right to be there. I felt like that before. And I think if most of us are honest, we have all been in that situation at one time or another to where we prayed to God for something and we just thought, I don't blame you if you don't listen to me. I don't blame you if you don't answer my prayers because I don't deserve this. But this is what I want. I'm just trying to be honest with you. I don't deserve it. I don't merit it. And that's where grace comes in. And that's where he wants to point us. And he wants to help us to find the answer. Pray and listen. Research, not coming, start looking up in the Bible all the different stories that pertain along the same lines. And I'll bet you anything you find the answer. And I'll bet you'll find not only his grace, but his deliverance. God wanted to meet her needs that day, just like he wants to meet ours today. And he may not be doing it in just a bold, blunt, boom, get up and walk and go. It may be, I'm going to point you in the right direction. I really want you to find this. And if I have to repeat it several times, I will. Until she finally come up with the right answer. He says, good answer. Go your way. Now, I am confident that whenever that woman came, she was hoping that Jesus would follow her to her house to lay hands on her daughter, and she could physically, in every way, see the miracle take place. But it didn't happen that way. Good answer. Go your way. What you've asked for has been granted. And it says the woman went home and found her daughter lying on the bed, completely free. That's what God still wants to do today. He wants our prayers to be answered. He really does. But I think he sometimes wants us to have a little investment in it so that we can appreciate it. This morning as we've gathered here for worship, maybe you've been praying for something and it just seems like the walls are blocked up and the doors are all closed. I encourage you to pray and listen. Pray and search. Pray and seek. Seek and you'll find. God's trying to do something. Let's not get in his way, but let's get behind him and follow. If there's any need that you have this morning as we stand for the invitation, won't you respond to God as we stand and sing, Shall We Gather to